It is often said that fighters should look like living statues carved from granite, titans forged from endless hours in the gym, men with shredded muscles and physiques sculpted to intimidate. But the ring, as history has proven time and again, has no interest in aesthetics. Muscles don't guarantee victory, and shredded abs don't stop fists. Some of the most unlikely warriors, fighters who appear more at home at a buffet table than inside the squared circle, have shattered those expectations, turning their size, their resilience, and their deceptive speed into weapons that leave their opponents broken and bewildered. This is the story of those chubby destroyers, the walking tanks of cholesterol and power, who humbled the jacked monsters of combat sports and reminded the world that you can never judge a book by its cover. Ismail Lazar is one such fighter. With the build of a tank and the fearless mentality of a brawler, Lazar never cared how imposing his opponent looked. On one particular night, he stood across from Daniel Sam, the so-called African Terminator, a towering, muscle-bound giant who looked every bit the archetype of a gym monster. But Lazar wasn't there to admire physiques. From the opening bell, he charged forward as if powered by a fast food combo meal, smashing into Sam with relentless aggression. Every strike Sam threw, every heavy punch meant to intimidate, was absorbed by Lazar's natural armor, his so-called cholesterol shield. Daniel tried to fire back, tried to show the muscle could dominate the mass, but it was useless. Lazar's pressure was suffocating, his fists merciless. When the end came, it was as brutal as it was inevitable. Lazar crushed Sam, shutting down the bodybuilder as if resetting him to factory settings. No amount of muscles or conditioning could prepare the Terminator for the force of a fighter who refused to play by the stereotypes. Another name that silences doubters is Vyacheslav Datsik, a fighter with a reputation as wild as his power. He is a man who has already toppled legends like Alexander Emelianenko and Antonio Bigfoot Silva, and who thrives on dismantling men who look physically untouchable. When he was matched against the feared Kofi King, a fighter who had destroyed nearly every opponent in his path, most expected the muscular powerhouse to dominate. But Datsik showed no fear. From the first second, he threw himself into the battle, unleashing a storm of punches that stripped King of his aura piece by piece. It wasn't just a fight. It was an execution. And in the end, the King was dethroned. His reign ended at the hands of a man who looked nothing like the sculpted warriors and glossy posters, but who carried a weapon far deadlier: unrelenting heart and the willingness to embrace chaos. Then there is Chris Huggy Bear Barnett, a man who defies expectations in the most entertaining way possible. A real-life kung fu panda, Barnett doesn't just fight, he performs. With his round frame, he looks like a man you'd find at a backyard cookout rather than in a cage. Yet, once the bell rings, he moves with shocking agility and strikes with devastating power. When he faced Travis Wolff, a hulking powerhouse who resembled a walking slab of stone, the fight looked mismatched. From the first round, Wolff imposed his size, dragging Barnett into clinches, using his mass to smother him. But Barnett bided his time. And in the second round, the story flipped. With an explosion of energy, Barnett unleashed his fists, sending Wolff crashing to the floor. A barrage of punches followed, forcing the referee to intervene before any further damage could be done. But it wasn't just the knockout that stole the show. It was Barnett's celebration. The rotund fighter spun into a wild belly dance, proving not only that size deceives, but also that charisma can make victory unforgettable. Drazan Janjan is another unlikely warrior, a man who looked more like a hobbit who skipped leg day than a professional boxer. His opponent, Kevin Walter, was the opposite: tall, muscular, carved like an art piece meant to inspire intimidation. From the opening bell, Walter unleashed high-voltage strikes, throwing with the arrogance of a man who believed the fight would be short. But Janjan had other plans. Moving with surprising sharpness, he slipped punches like a fat Neo dodging bullets in the Matrix. And when he saw the opening, he struck with one perfect punch. Walter collapsed, sent straight into the shadow realm, his muscles powerless to protect him. The crowd gasped in disbelief, but Janjan had proven that masked-up intimidation meant nothing when met with perfect timing and fearless execution. Bob Sapp, the steroid-fueled juggernaut infamous for his dirty tactics and blatant disrespect, seemed like an unstoppable force on paper. A mountain of muscle with a reputation for chaos, Sapp strutted into the ring like royalty. But on one night, karma came for him in the massive form of Alexander Lungu. If Sap was a mutant built on raw power, Lungu was an avalanche disguised as a man. When the bell rang, Lungu wasted no time, hammering Sap with the kind of blows that rattled his enormous frame. Sap tried to rise, tried to use his size to intimidate, but that decision sealed his fate. Lungu calmly delivered the finishing shot, and the giant known as the Beast was silenced. The oversized Elsa of combat sports had been knocked out cold by a man who looked like he belonged in a world's strongest man competition rather than a prize fight. It was poetic justice, karma wrapped in heavyweight fists. And then, of course, there is Roy Nelson. Known as Big Country, Nelson has long been the symbol of everything unorthodox in combat sports. With a belly hanging proudly over his shorts and a physique that seemed allergic to cardio, Nelson nonetheless carried fists that were nothing short of nuclear warheads. Late in his career, he faced Dylan Kleckler, a muscular powerhouse with the kind of body that belonged on the cover of fitness magazines. From the opening seconds, Kleckler unleashed a barrage, confident that his power and conditioning would overwhelm the older fighter. But Nelson was unmoved. Instead, he grew sharper, angrier, as if Kleckler's punches weren't just attacks, but an insult to his pride. And then came the explosion. Nelson delivered his right hand like Thor swinging Mjolnir, and Kleckler fell as if struck by lightning. The jacked monster who thought his muscles were armor found himself staring at the lights, his dreams shattered by a man who looked like he had eaten his way through training camp. What these stories reveal is something that has always been true in combat sports. Appearances deceive. Muscles may impress, physiques may intimidate, but once the bell rings, none of it matters. The ring strips fighters down to their essence: skill, heart, timing, and the ability to endure pain. And in that crucible, men who look like underdogs on the street often become monsters in the cage. Lazar, Datsyuk, Barnett, Anjan, Lungu, Nelson, all of them showed the world that being underestimated is a weapon in itself. Their opponents fell victim not only to punches and kicks, but to their own arrogance, their belief that looking the part meant playing the part. In the end, combat sports are the ultimate equalizer. A fat man can dance, a hobbit can punch like a god, and a kung fu panda can send giants crumbling to the mat. The lesson is simple, timeless, and undeniable. Never judge a book by its cover, because sometimes that cover hides the deadliest story of them all. Now I'll turn it to you. Which of these shocking upsets and brutal knockouts was your favorite? Was it Barnett's kung fu panda moment, Roy Nelson's thunderous right hand, or the raw chaos of Lazar smashing Daniel Sam? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of unexpected warriors, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story from the fight game.